Hey, everybody, welcome to another segment. Today, we're going to talk about Tim Ross and this big old controversy of his a couple recent podcasts that they found him cussing. Is it okay for Christians to cuss? All right. Is it okay for us to cuss in certain contextual environments? Right. Let's get into it. All right. Let's get it.
Get it out because this is the way I've mused it. I don't want to be Carlton Pearson, right? Like, I got a revelation of inclusionism. I'm going to walk around with a wagon full of theological material to prove my point. Because then I don't want to do that either. So then it's like, well, I'm not trying to start a crusade for or against it.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm an emotional creature and some stuff affects me deeply. And I could say it's terrible, but some stuff is past terrible in my book.
Yeah.
And you got to understand. So what he's referencing is, hey, with this whole cussing thing, look, I'm not trying to have a whole bunch of theological baggage with me at every time that I cuss that I can show you why it's okay for me to use certain words and certain languages. But I also don't want to have this big old crazy debates either because, hey, I'm just telling you where I'm at. I'm telling you, hey, look, this is what I do in certain scenarios because of the height, the peak of my emotions. Okay, this is what comes out sometimes. All right. And this is just him putting everything out on the chopping block. All right. So this is where we are right now.
And so, and then some of this is cultural because if I was in Ireland, we'd be drinking a pint of Guinness and cussing.
Yeah, because I'm going to be honest with you. My people, Jamaicans, just where I'm at, you can ask my wife, bruh, could we just say, I'm going to just say the H word, right? We'll be like, what's the H? Right? It's cultural. It has no negative connotation to it. It doesn't have anything negative attached to it. It's just a word that we use to describe the confusion that is taking place in our minds, right? And that is true. Like you said, a cup of a cup of not Henny, but Guinness, right? Beer, ale, right? That is cultural, right? Same with the Jews and just with Jesus. It was wine. It was not grape juice. It was, and said, well, it was a juice. No, it came alcoholic. If it was juice, nobody could get drunk off of it. God wouldn't have said drunkenness is a sin if you can't get drunk off of grape juice. Like, come on. It was an alcohol beverage. Jesus turned water into an alcohol beverage. It was wine. All right. So I'm just throwing that out there. All right. So we cannot sit there and act like and have this cognitive dissonance about that. All right. And be disingenuous. But when it comes to this, also, if you look in the Hebrew and Greek, how Paul, and he's going to address this, how Paul discussed, hey, this is my resume. And compared to Jesus, it's S-H-I-T. It literally is the equivalent in the Greek. It's equivalent to what we say the S word, right? And the only reason I'm saying that is because I don't know if you have children around, right? It's equivalent to the S word. What the prophets used when he was rebuking, they were using certain terminologies that was considered like cuss words in that day, right? To show how the gall that these people have to do X, Y, and Z. All right. So these things theologically, I think a cussing Christian is a theological type of debate that we have in the church.
And talking about the word. Yeah. So it's like, maybe I have too many stamps in my passport. I've been to many places. And so, I've been in green rooms where it's all water and fresca. And I've been in green rooms where it's like, do you want a red wine or a white wine? Yeah. So I'm like, so it's only happened in like 2 episodes. Yeah. But now I'm being completely judged off of that. And it's like, okay, well, there it is.
Did the We're Not a Christian podcast come after that?
No, that was before that.
That was before that.
Yeah. And that wasn't even a precursor. Like, I'm trying to warm y'all up because I'm about to start cussing, right? You know what I mean?
And you got to understand, when he says we're not a Christian podcast, what he's saying is my podcast is not going to be labeled in the category Christian. Why? Because he's probably going to be with people who are not all Christians, even though he had a lot of Christians on his podcast. Or like majority of his guests were Christians. But guess what? He's been on unbiblical podcast, right? He's been on multiple different podcasts. Ruslan, over here to the left of your screen. He's been on No Jumper. But he was standing in the gap for Christians. But what I'm saying is he's been on No Jumper. He's been on multiple different podcasts who are not believers of Christ. Either people who deal in the adult industry, etc. Same with Tim Ross, right? And sometimes, right, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes when I'm talking to certain individuals, only certain individuals, right? Only certain individuals, sometimes I will use the N-word, to sort of captivate them in such a way, not to say I have to be just like them, not saying you have to use these words, you don't. Because a lot of people that are living total opposite lives of me and I don't live like they live, I don't speak how they speak, right? So I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is sometimes it takes a certain seasoning. I'm going to just say it like this. It takes a certain seasoning or a certain type of person to be able to reach certain people. All right? That's all I'm going to say. I'm not condoning sin. I am not condoning sin. I'm not saying you have to be in a strip club in order to reach people who go to strip clubs. That is not what I'm saying. So don't twist what I'm saying. Let's keep it going.
That was literally to say, like, for us, it was like, okay, when you come off of the top 10 in religion and spirituality, and you crest the top 200 on Spotify and on iTunes,
it's a big deal.
That means this is bigger than us. And I think it's supposed to be bigger than us, because if we're only reaching people that believe like us, and we're not, and we do have an agnostic audience. We do have atheists. We do have people from the LGBTQIA plus community. Like we have people listening. We do have deconstructionists listening to us, reconstructionists listening to us, church hurt people. So there's a lot of people that make up our audience, and I'm trying to be true to what I feel like I'm supposed to do. And because this is a place where we welcome vulnerability, I'm not going to try to sell you a version of me that's not authentically me.
And that is why the purpose of this podcast, this YouTube, those who don't know, right? The purpose of this YouTube is to instruct the current saint, but also nurture new saints, as well as bring new people into the fold. So if you're not a Christian and you're watching this, if you have questions, if you have topics that you want me to address, I will address it, because those are the things, that's where my heart is. I don't know if this is considered an apologetic thing, but I want to sort of try to hit a certain demographic, those who are Christians, but I want those who are not Christians see a Christian instruct other Christians how to conduct themselves, so that you will know a genuine believer, right? Because you unbelievers have seen multiple horrible examples of people who call themselves followers of Jesus. I just want to be a good example to you, right? Right? And then in hopes of seeing this, you will say there is something to Christ. There is something to Jesus. I want to inquire more. Hey, St.Cabot, here's some topics that I want you to address, right? I have somebody in my DMs asking me to hit and talk on a certain individual, which I am, right? But, right? So there's certain things how I talk. This gives me liberty to talk certain ways, but I'm just trying to fill it out right now, right? But I will be saying certain things that I would not say in a pulpit. I will say certain things that I will not say teaching, in a convictional setting, right? But I just want people to know, in my audience, to know where my heart is and the purpose of this thing, right? I want the unbeliever to see a good example of what a believer actually is, as well as I want the unbeliever to see another believer instructing new believers or current or seasoned believers how to conduct themselves as the body of Christ, so that they can have a good representation, so that they can make a good sound judgment of whether they want to follow Jesus, right? That is the purpose of my channel, and I pray that you keep rolling with me.
Sometimes when I'm in the heat of passion, some words I use come from that crayon box, those colors at the bottom, right? They ain't the first thing always on my mind, but it ain't like it's some remote thing and I got to stub my toe or be waterboarded for these words to come out.
Right.
So that's the context of that.
That's helpful. I put out an album in 20.
What he's about to get into, this is sort of where I stand as well. All right. It is so dope how he addresses this.
15. Called Do For One, and it was a narrative album, and it was this whole idea about a guy making it and then losing himself in the process, and wasn't necessarily written from my perspective, not all of it anyway, right? And so there was some similar moments, and we just took them out. Yep. And at the time, we were also a collective called the Dream Junkies, and there was some N-words in some of the music that obviously I wasn't saying, but some of the guys were saying. There's no coming back from that. You can come back from this, Tim. This is light work. If being a white Christian rapper saying N-word, irredeemable.
This is the thing. Ruslan was not saying the N-word, right? Ruslan isn't actually a dope artist. Check his music out. But Ruslan was not saying it. It was his brother-in-law. No, it was not his brother-in-law. Excuse me. It was his two dudes. It was John Gibbs and Belief. Belief and John Gibbs are the other two artists that is in the group with Ruslan called Dream Junkies. All right. The other two are black brothers, right? Are brothers, black. Ruslan is the only white dude, but Ruslan is married to a black woman. Not saying that permits him to say the N-word because he doesn't, but he's just giving you, I'm just giving you context to a little bit of who Ruslan is.
It's irredeemable. So
my stomach. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So I ended up doing this whole album, and ironically enough, like there were some churches behind it and whatever. And then I did this interview with Rapzilla, and I basically kind of laid out what you just laid out, and just got dragged for it
by Rapzilla,
by the Christian rap community at scale. Yeah, man. And it was bad because I was basically saying like, look, there's time and a place, there's context.
Yeah.
The Bible's not all PG. It's not all PG-13. We have to stop making art for the lowest common denominator,
right,
in terms of the Christian music. A lot of the same things, and it definitely came with a cost. And then I had to process. I talked to Propaganda about, ironically enough, and Prop was like, "Is this the hill you want to die on?"
Right.
You know,
and that's what we talked about that.
And I was like, "Nah,
this ain't it.
This ain't it."
Yeah.
But then in the same process, in my personal life, so my son was born. You met Levi. 2014. This is 2015 when this album comes out. 2016. He's Zoe's age, so he's aware we're saying words.
Yeah.
Right? And so I then had to wrestle with, okay, as a collective operating in the Christian space, whether we're a Christian rap group or not, relevant.
Right.
Do I want my son hearing me use language that is not aligned with the things I want him to reflect as a kid? Furthermore, do I want to be a part of making music that uses language like the N-word? And how would I feel if the same guys came in and called my son that?
Right.
Not that I need to have an opinion of how black people use that word.
Understood.
But
Absolutely
I have
correct.
an opinion about my son.
Oh, absolutely.
Not, you know what I mean?
For sure, absolutely.
And so I had to like process all that. And I've landed in a spot where, which I don't think anything you said is wrong, but I landed in a spot where I want to be the same person in front of my 8-year-old, in front of my 2-year-old, in front of my wife, in front of Zach, in front of Chris, in front of everybody, and not feel like I'm compartmentalized.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
This is what is so key, right? That was wisdom. His boy Propaganda said, "Is this the hill that you want to die on?" Not saying that technically using certain words in the certain context is a sin or wrong, but culturally what these words actually mean universally, even though you are using it in its right context, right, for the culture that you're addressing, right? But universally, it will not be accepted, and you will be demonized, and your credibility will be shot. Is this the hill that you want to die on? Typically, I would say you shouldn't, right? If you want to die on that hill, hey, all to you, right? But it, like Ruslan said, it comes with a cost. And then on top of that, look, he said, if anything else, I want to be the same person in every place. And that's where I'm at. I think we as believers should be the same individual in every place, right? This is what we call it's the term called integrity. God has the full integrity, meaning to be the same and have the same frame across the board. When somebody talks about you, somebody else can say the same thing, but it's the same thing with God. God is the same. It doesn't matter who his child is. He doesn't have to change to be somebody totally different for so-and-so, even though he may express himself in a different way, but he is the same God, right? Not saying you don't have many different facets of you, but at the end of the day, you are the same person in the same frame 24/7. That is what we call integrity, right? Not just doing the right thing at the right time when somebody's not looking as well, doing the right thing when somebody's not looking, but also integrity means having a sound and a firm structure about yourself that is, it holds weight and it stays the same. That is integrity, right? And I will challenge us is we should value in our integrity and we should value our credibility for the sake of the gospel, as well as we should always keep in the back of our minds. Is this something that I want my children to reflect? Am I the individual that I want my son to reflect? I say this all the time. If I am the only man that they will ever see in their life, am I the individual that if they're going to literally walk in the same footsteps as me, am I the person that they want to reflect? How I speak, how I move, etc., how I treat their mom, etc., everything. And that will sort of start zeroing in on the things that we should start discarding. And this is a wisdom issue. And this is not a heaven or hell issue if you're a Christian or not issue. This is a wisdom issue because we want to not look like the unbelievers. We want to be distinct. We want to be set apart. All right. So I ask you to re-examine this. I ask you to say, is this the hill that you want to die on? And is it worth your witness? Is it worth your credibility? And if you find it worth it, hey, that's between you and God. But for me and mine, it ain't. But hey, until next time, grace and peace.